Greetings from Castle Goring from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. And Merry Christmas tomorrow to all of you who celebrate Christmas. And to those of you who are Jewish, Happy Hanukkah. Well, today we have a lot of ground to cover, and I am going to cover it no matter how long it takes, because I actually thought that we only had 40-something lies and manipulations and deceptions and red herrings in episode 4. In fact, we have nearly 60. So I am going to hopefully whiz through them. But before doing that, I'm going to hold this up and then it will be posted. It is the Honesty Awards, the best and worst people in public life in 2022. There are 15 categories of the best and the worst, or the most and the least. And I would ask those of you who are so inclined to entertain yourselves and me by nominating whomever you feel is the most appropriate person to win these awards in these various categories. Okay, so this is going to be posted right now. Now, in the interests of both pace and celerity, which of course are slightly different, I'm going to start out by reading 3 comments and then plunge in and cover the rest of the rubbish, which is sometimes very dangerous, and one could almost say evil, because it's so destructive rubbish. Anyway, Christina C says, and this is a point I've tried to make before, and I think she's made it brilliantly, and I think it is super important. So, Hitler understood the impact of lies. Quotes, that in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility, because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victim to the big lie than the little lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. It would never come into their minds to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. That was Hitler's philosophy, and that was brilliantly implemented by his Minister of Propaganda, Josef Goebbels. I have said all along that Harry and Meghan remind me, and their campaign of propaganda, that they remind me of Josef Goebbels and Hitler. Now, I have come to discover, as really as the story has evolved, that even I did not realize, certainly when I wrote the book, the enormity of what they were up to. Oh, I had some clue, but the enormity, no, I didn't. Well, I now do. And my initial statement bears even greater validity now than it did when I originally made it 3 years ago. Christina C. finishes off by observing, Harry and Meghan's problem is that their lies are not consistent, so I don't believe anything they say. Yes, they're no Goebbels, that's for sure. Josef Goebbels was far more intelligent than they are, and far less arrogant, because they believe that because it's come out of their mouth, it's an oracle, like they're the Delphic oracle. Anyway, Mandy Morning says, one might quite rightly expect that a documentary would in fact contain documented factual evidence of the case in question. The sleight of hand by the snake oil salesman at Netflix in exchanging what they pretend is a documentary for a reality show more akin to The Only Way is Essex would not stand up in a court of law. And may I interject at that point and say, Netflix, Harry and Meghan all stated that they were not going to be embarking upon a reality show. Well, of course, it's turned out to be an on-reality show. So to that extent, they were absolutely correct. However, is it a documentary? No. Is it a mockumentary? Yes. Is it a reality show? Well, it is an on-reality show pretending to be a reality show. So to resume, the whole thing is a concerted attack on the monarchy, the royal family, and the people of the United Kingdom. They have used the tactics of a cult by mixing a tiny little bit of truth with outright deliberate lies. I couldn't agree more. I cancelled my subscription to Netflix some time ago, and after reading about this fiasco, I'm feeling rather pleased with myself that I am not paying to be fed a pack of lies. Well said. Well said. And user RV8FR2TK2U. I do hate these things that YouTube has imposed upon people. It was so much nicer when you knew who was asking the question or making the observation. Anyway, to continue. Dear Lady C, a couple of points. How did the Air Canada steward and the bodyguard know that Harry and Meghan were out of the royal family when Harry had stayed behind to work out their arrangement? At that point, the public didn't know anything. It was when Harry returned to Canada that they announced Megxit. My dear, I wish I knew your name. Brilliantly spotted. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Well, yet another Meganian truth. A Meganian truth is a 3-letter word beginning with L. There's the letter I and it ends with E. That's the fact. And now, without further ado, I'm going to pick up the tissue of misinformation, the propaganda that would actually make Goebbels proud to have been such a good teacher to such good students. Number 32. This is when Harry makes a damaging and basically misleading and overall untrue assertion. He states he has 30 years of experience seeing how the relationship between the royal family and the media works. So far, so good. But no, he diverges from our version of the truth to his and Meghan's version of the truth, because he asserts there were constant briefings about other members of the family, about favours inviting the press in. It's the dirty game. Oh, I should have got into Harry mode. constant briefings about other members of the family, about favours inviting the press in. It's a dirty game. There's leaking, but there's also planting of stories. Well, Harry, of course, is referring to the bad old days when Mark Boland was trying to make Camilla acceptable, which he was having an uphill struggle doing. And yes, there were stories circulating at the time that Mark Boland would actually spin around and give stories. Let's put it this way, divert the press's attention. Insofar as I am aware, and I think I have at least as much knowledge, if not more, incisive experience, which I certainly do, than Harry, where certain members of the press and the media are concerned, which, incredibly enough, is not an idle boast, but is a fact. There's not been systematic briefing. That's Meghan chipping in with the way Confidential magazine in the United States, long before she was born and when I was a child, used to function. For instance, when they discovered that Rock Hudson was gay, they threw someone else whose name I don't remember, less grand star, onto the bus and outed him. That's something that the tabloids do in the United States of America. It's not something the royal family or the press do in Britain. The reason why Mark Boland had to stop it and was, first of all, it was causing outrage on moral grounds, and secondly, it was proving tactically inefficient because the press would run with the story that they had and run with whatever Mark Boland had presented them with. Of course, Mark Boland was very lucky because his boyfriend at the time, who I then became his husband, was the head of the Press Complaints Commission. I know, because I took the press to the Press Complaints Commission, and Guy Black was wholly inadequate. Anyway, Harry then says, and I'm quoting him directly, because he's alluding to what Mark Boland used to do. William and I both saw what used to happen in our dad's office, and we made an agreement that we would never let that happen in our office. Well, clearly his office didn't travel to Hollywood with him. Number 33 is both hypocrisy and a lie. I would far rather get destroyed in the press than play along with this game or this business of trading, says sanctimonious Harry, as he's throwing everybody else under the bus. And to see my brother's office copy the very thing we promised the two of us would never ever do. That was heartbreaking. But of course, it's not heartbreaking for William what's happening. And also, William's office didn't leak anything about Harry and Meghan. I happen to know what went on. I happen to know who was speaking to whom. It may be not transparent to the public, but I can tell you it's pretty transparent to people in the know. Line number 34. Meghan states, after there's a photograph, a shot of a pathetic Christmas tree at Nottingham Cottage in 2018, that the palace controlled everything and she wasn't even allowed to text a photo to her friends. Well, this, of course, is a brazen lie, and Netflix is about to expose it in the succeeding minutes. Because, of course, she was allowed to take photographs and text them to her friends. I mean, what is she talking about? Lie number 35. And this is just one of the glorious Goebbels lies. Abigail Spencer portrays Meghan and Harry as trapped in this dreadfully oppressive institution where their spirits were being crushed, and here is Abigail Spencer, who's now confirmed that she was the source of the leak on behalf of Meghan to People magazine about her misery and Thomas Markle. Because remember, we're dealing with only a few days in January. She says Meghan and Harry were trapped in this dreadfully oppressive institution where their spirits were being crushed, and these people can't speak without saying and I was not allowed to say anything. But she makes that assertion and then, according to her, takes it upon herself without Meghan's knowledge, consent or approval, which of course, Aurora, please wake up and catch that flying pig. God, the three of them. Oh gosh, we're being inundated with flying pigs. Because she's now about to confess that she is the source of the People magazine article. Which included this information that Meghan's father had received a letter from Meghan, which so far at this time, remember it's January 2019, nobody knows about except Meghan, Jason North, Harry, Abigail Spencer, and Thomas Markle Sr. She exposes the contents of the letter to People magazine. And she's now choking back tears. She's such another actress. My poor friend, Meghan. Her eyes glisten. God, they must have had so many cut onions underneath the noses of these jerks. Well, how did Abigail Spencer know about the contents of the letter if Meghan didn't give it to her? Why did she take it upon herself to betray Meghan's trust and breach the instructions that Meghan had given her to never say anything to anybody? That's in her own words. I mean, if you have any sense of logic and a memory that lasts longer than 3 seconds, this program is an insult to everybody's intelligence. Because Abigail Spencer now spins around and says that she leaked the story to People magazine, and the editor at the time was one of her best friends. She declares the purpose was to turn the narrative around. Well, that's a quote from Abigail Spencer, who, remember, is so truthful that she said that Meghan is the one who told her she can't say anything. And she's so loyal to Meghan that she says something breaches her confidence. Funny, Meghan didn't sue Abigail Spencer or People magazine. Yet she sued her father after Abigail Spencer placed that story and damaged her father's reputation seriously. It's a pity Mr. Justice Warby didn't have all of this background to go on when he made his judgment. What no one seems to know, but I can tell you because I do, is that it became imperative at this time to throw sand in everybody's eyes to prevent a very damaging secret from being exposed, or that Harry and Meghan feared was in danger of being exposed. Everything that's happened subsequently can be traced back to these few days in January, where Meghan, who has a brass neck the like of which I have never seen before, and who thinks that offence is the best form of defence, and who then weaponizes vulnerability when she is as vulnerable as tungsten in a baby's crib. Anyway, number 36. They're playing with the timeline because all of a sudden January now switches to November, where there's the baby shower. And Meghan, of course, is pretty largely pregnant at the time of the baby shower. I think it was November. It might have been December, but I think it was November 2018. She's hugely pregnant. At how many days? I've forgotten. But anyway, not that many. So it's now back to the baby shower. And here we have more victimhood. Because according to Meghan, her friends were doing a nice thing and giving her a shower. And of course, the mean, nasty British people and the mean, nasty British press resented the fact that her friends gave her a nice baby shower. So here's Meghan saying, they're going to shower her with love. She's referring to herself in the third person, by the way. Speaking about her friends. They're going to shower her with love. Shower her baby. We're going to get through this. We're going to survive this with her. So Meghan is asserting that a cabal of her friends are actually putting on a baby shower to help her over a hurdle that hasn't yet taken place. But I dare say Goebbels and Harry and Meghan know that time is a variable thing when you have no respect for truth or fact. Number 37. Meghan accuses the British of taking a beautiful moment born of love and trying to ruin it. This is the baby shower. She can't comprehend the outrage responsible people felt about a member of our royal family, not celebrities, not vulgarians, a member of our royal family, and our royal family is expected at all times to conduct itself respectfully, respectably, and with decorum, and not flash the cash like some cheap vulgarian who has hustled her way using every attribute I have. Gosh, I feel a cold coming on. She understands that amongst the cognoscenti in the United States of America, even the woke cognoscenti, vulgarity is in certain segments of the media celebrated. So she understands that she's not causing any offense to people in the United States, and in fact she is bigging up her profile, but in the United Kingdom she is causing outrage. And who's to blame for it? Not her. Not her. The British people and the British press. Because we are mean and nasty, and at a time of financial hardship, where this country is struggling, and this country has economic as well as social problems that we need to pull together and get through, she is doing her utmost to trash our reputation. And when we do not approve of her misconduct, we're the ones at fault. Now we have Lucy Fraser's lie number 38. They knew they didn't want to bring Archie up in this frenzy they lived in. So they left and deliberately have created a greater frenzy with even more access to the media. Lucy Fraser, is that what you're saying? I mean, the frenzy was of their own creation and still is. There's a lot more frenzy that could come if everybody were willing to speak the truth about what really went down. They didn't want to bring Archie up in this frenzy they lived in. So they divest themselves of the protection of the royal family, go to Hollywood and become media entities. I mean, are these people stupid or just brazen? Line number 39. Meghan and Harry in the program are linking Frogmore Cottage to Frogmore House and confusing the two Frogmores. Doubtless, of course, because they really hoped to have Frogmore House and instead ended up with Frogmore Cottage, which Meghan, of course, disparaged, and so did Harry. Sorry, they didn't. They disparaged Nottingham Cottage publicly. Privately, she disparaged Frogmore Cottage, which she thought was way beneath her, I am told. Notwithstanding the fact that the Grand Duchess Ksenia of Russia was happy to live there, and she was far grander than Meghan Markle, to the best of my recollection. I could be wrong. I maybe need to be re-educated. Will People magazine send someone over to do it? Let's see. And then she says, outright lie, that Frogmore Cottage, that's where we ended up having our baby. No. The birth certificate says Portland Hospital, and you say it later. How do you end up having your baby at Frogmore Cottage? Yes, you had initially said you wanted a home birth. But when things went wrong, which some of us know about, yes, we do, the birth took place at Portland Hospital. Well, that, of course, has slipped through the net. So then there are photos of a grotesquely pregnant Meghan with skin-tight clothes that accentuate the bump. So the emphasis, of course, is on Meghan having produced the baby. But at Frogmore Cottage? Why does the birth certificate say Portland Hospital? I just throw that one into the mix for what it's worth. Number 40 is an inadvertent admission of the truth. 6th May 2019. The baby's birth announcement. Joyous announcement. There are joyous scenes refuting all the allegations by Meghan and Harry of media and palace malice. Netflix shows the exultation by people of colour. There is Whoopi Goldberg, who incidentally has interviewed me and whom I happen to like. There's Whoopi claiming that the baby is going to look just like her. No, Whoopi, darling. No, it doesn't. Meghan has the mixed race attitude that you don't. Or as they would put it in Jamaica, she going to improve our colour. And she did. Very Jamaican, that. She going to improve her colour. So the baby stood no chance of looking like you. And any chance it did have of looking at you, darling, I've got news for you. Meghan would head to the nearest plastic surgeon, the one who has erased her Afro-American features. Not to mention the poor children maybe having to have what in Jamaica they used to call them natty head straightened. I mean, I would have loved it if the children had looked more mixed race than they do. And I know most people of colour or people from countries that are predominantly with citizens of colour would have loved it. But Whoopi, you were wrong. Sorry. Not that I'm blaming you. Then there's a black gentleman who I have no idea who he is. He most likely is very famous, but I'm afraid I'm not that much into popular culture, saying that a black prince has been born, that Archie has changed the game. Well, I wrote a book called People of Colour and the Royals, which makes it absolutely clear that this misnomer that there's such a thing as racial purity, A, doesn't exist, and B, certainly doesn't exist in either the extended or the more immediate royal family, including Harry and William having Indian blood, which is indisputable. And we won't mention the many overlaps with Madrigana of Pharaoh, because even though she was one ancestress, she showed up 6 times alone in Queen Charlotte, who was born Princess Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz's family tree. And she shows up in practically every other European royal house, and the royal family kept on intermarrying. So one Madrigana of Pharaoh is most likely 20, 30, 50 or 100 strains, going far enough back. And Archie didn't change the game because Archie isn't black. Let's remember, Meghan has gone to great lengths to inform us in this mockumentary that she was never treated as black and clearly didn't regard herself as black, otherwise she'd have ticked the black box at school, until the British press and the British public embraced her as being black. Oh, God, can you imagine? These people want me to be black. Black. Get away, get away, get away. I'm not black, I'm not black, I'm not black. Don't take my word for it. Look at my driver's license. It says Caucasian. Yes, it did. Anyway, number 41. is an inadvertent admission of how confusion reigned, because there they put up as an illustration the Sun newspaper's joyous headline, Sunrise, S-O-N, rise, at Windsor. Meghan has baby boy at home, which of course was what Meghan had led people to believe she was going to do. And I'm sure the original plan was actually very sound. Of course, many a plan comes a cropper, especially where childbirth is concerned. And more than that, at this point, I really do not wish to say. So I will move on to number 42, which is manipulation. James Holt, spare me, is with his constant smile. I mean, you really have to be very careful of somebody who smiles as he says, I've got some really terrible news for you. Your husband or your wife or your dog or your cat just died. Sorry. Anyway, James Holt, who has very British teeth, as the Americans would rather cattily observe. And I'm going to be very naughty and observe that he and Harry could actually both profit from a visit to Meghan's orthodontist, although it would be helpful if the orthodontist doesn't give them horse teeth the way he gave her. Or maybe it's barracuda teeth with horse caps. He's wheeled out to say that things had been done. Now this is about after the baby's born, the photographs that are all traditionally taken at the hospital. James Holt is wheeled out to say that things had been done for many years in a certain way, but Meghan and Harry wanted to do things differently. Netflix sent flashes of pictures of Princess Anne and Diana leaving hospital, and a big photocall on the steps as you've given birth. Then there's a photo of Catherine. And why are there no photographs, Netflix, of Sarah York being photographed as she is exiting the Portland hospital where she gave birth? You tell me, since you're all so knowledgeable, do you see one lie after the other? One misrepresentation. They use the truth to tell a lie. Lie number 43. Meghan claims, I have a very long-standing relationship with my doctor. She's referring to her obstetrician. Meghan, that is a total lie. I know who you claim your obstetrician was. Your claimed obstetrician is married to somebody I've known for nearly 50 years. You would imagine that we have contacts, mutual contacts, and that I would have some knowledge that you are in your naivety would think, as you erase everything British, including relationships going back 50 years. You didn't know the doctor for any great length of time that you have alleged was your obstetrician. Also, medical ethics prevent the doctor from confirming or denying any involvement with you, and you know this. I have a very long-standing relationship with my doctor. That's used as an excuse for why the baby couldn't be born at the Lindo wing. It had to be born at the Portland Hospital, which they couldn't have photographs because it doesn't have steps. But Sarah York managed to have photographs taken. I mean, you just want to tear your hair out. I mean, I'm sorry this is going to take longer than I thought, but I am determined, because this is a very important episode, not mine, episode number 4 of Netflix, because it is fundamental to what had happened before and what came after. And it is the key to Meghan and Harry's thinking as well as functioning. Number 44, obfuscation. Meghan excuses her refusal to play ball with the media at the time of the baby's birth by revealing supposed worries about her being an older mother, that she might have to have had a C-section. Aurora, please, get that cushion for me. My back is hurting me. That her obstetrician is at the Portland Hospital, where there are no steps. This is Meghan talking. There are no steps like at St. Mary's, Paddington. And as I've already pointed out, Sarah York's baby was born at the Portland Hospital and she was photographed there. Do they think everybody is illiterate, ignorant, and incapable of speaking the truth just because they are? Line number 45 is a misleading picture. There's a photocall at Windsor, where, remember, 2 days after Archie's birth, when Harry said that the baby had changed a lot in the 2 weeks since they'd had it, or I think it was 2 weeks, it might have been a month. I'll have to look at the footage to remember exactly what, because the problem with Harry and Meghan is their claims are so versatile that it's almost impossible to keep up with the latest version of their truth, which bears no recognizable resemblance to my idea of the truth, which doesn't really vary to that extent. But anyway, there's Meghan at the Photocall with Harry, and she's in a white dress and very high heels, and she's gained a little weight. Well, preparation for lactation, I would imagine, but I could be wrong. The body needs to be prepared if you hope to lactate, or maybe now that she had been delivered of a baby, she was able to enjoy, or maybe the anxiety in the run-up to the birth had caused her to put on weight. I don't know what caused her to put on weight, but with certainty, and what I know I'm not prepared to say at this point, but let me put it this way. I'm obfuscating now, and I'm making it absolutely clear that she had put on a bit of weight. And that she did practically no speaking. She was very sweet, because Meghan can be very sweet. But Harry is the one who let the cat out of the bag by saying how much the baby had changed in the previous, I think it was 2 weeks, since his birth. Now we have Buck passing number 46. James Holt trying to make out that Harry and Meghan were sacrificial lambs in presenting Archie to the world 2 days after his birth, instead of taking all the time in the world like ordinary people. James Holt. Harry and Meghan are not ordinary people. People who have extraordinary privilege in extraordinary privileged positions are expected to live up to them. Noblesse oblige requires that you don't act like an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. You fulfill the obligations of your role. The failure to do so, Harry and Meghan's, the expectation was reasonable, and to pretend that they should be allowed to take all the time in the world. Why should they be allowed to take all the time in the world? Who else ever did? And why, if Meghan was infirm, I mean, photographers could have gone to her bedside. There are photographs of the Queen after the birth of her children, in bed with the children. Meghan didn't need to put on a white dress and high heels. No, she didn't. Muhammad could have gone to the mountain instead of the mountain coming to Muhammad. Let's put it that way. Famous saying. Now we have number 47, Harry's whinge. The amount of abuse we got, you especially, Meg's baby. Oh, I love you so much. Can I have a BJ? Please, 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 just a little BJ. Just please, one little BJ. Sorry, to return to what he says. The amount of abuse we got, you especially, for not wanting to serve our child up on a silver platter. Excuse me, do you see the ridiculousness of this couple? I mean, they're being supported by the state. They're hoping that their child will have the right of succession to the throne of this country. And they are acting as if we are some Carthaginian child-worshipping cult about to sacrifice the baby and carve it up and eat it. I mean, are these people insane? I mean, the false premises under which they argue their case is beyond belief. Why, if you had nothing to hide, were you playing cat and mouse games? Because that's what is coming across, that you had something to hide. Or is it what you're hiding, that you're simply oppositionalists and rebels in the cause of overthrowing the institution that has given you the platform from which you function, as you do everything in your power to denigrate it. Number 48, Afua Hirsch says she's justifying their breach of practice in sacrificing their baby on a silver platter. Because, I mean, is their premise that because this child was mixed race, that it shouldn't be shown? Or is their hypothesis that because they are so special and it's their baby, that we are supposed to pay everything for them and get nothing in return except the crumbs that these arrogant egotistical elitists throw at us, the people, the scum of the earth, the filth and muck, the hoi polloi, that they can't even sully themselves with by being in the same aircraft. Because that's the message I'm getting loud and clear. Anyway, she justifies their breach of practice as evidence of something it isn't. As Harry now refers to a working class presenter and anti-privilege advocate called Danny Baker, who posted a spoof picture that has often been posted before to pillory and lambast people of privilege, and the picture he posted was of a middle-aged couple with a chimp in fine clothing. He added the caption, "Royal baby leaves hospital," and in so doing, even though by his own account it hadn't occurred to him, why would it occur to him? Meghan is whiter than most white people. And the baby is certainly whiter than practically all white people. And Harry, being a ginger, is very, very fair-skinned as well. So it wouldn't have occurred to him, and it didn't occur to him. Well, he faced a monumental outcry, and I have to say, I think it was a little bit, shall we say, silly of him. Actually, I'd even go further and say stupid, because he didn't make the connection. But then he didn't make the connection because he wasn't a racist, and he wasn't aware of the racial issues. And he wasn't aware that this photograph, which has been posted many times before in reference to white overprivileged children, when published in reference to a child with a minuscule amount of African blood, all of a sudden it's racist. But it wasn't racist otherwise. Anyway, he faced an outcry and was accused of mocking Meghan's Afro-American heritage. And Hirsch uses this to claim that it's a metaphor for the way the family was being treated. It wasn't a metaphor. No. Danny Baker deleted the tweet and apologized, stating that he had made a quote-unquote naive and catastrophic mistake with his choice of image, but he denied any racist intent. He explained that the choice of a chimpanzee dressed as a lord, which is what it was dressed as, had been made to quote-unquote lampoon privilege. Incidentally, that's a photograph that has been used over the decades repeatedly to lampoon privilege. Well, the BBC sacked him, maintaining that he had made a serious error of judgment, which I think he had, and that it went against the values of the station, which I get. Well, Baker expressed disagreement with the BBC's decision to fire him, but he was fired. So there were consequences. Now, 49. Doria misses the point and shows why Meghan was never going to be able to fit in well into the royal family. Here is Doria. I mean, a woman singularly lacking in anything called cultivation, with her Uriah Heep presentation. Well, you know, they've already stripped both of them of any kind of privacy. It was almost like it's not your child, it's the institution's child. You should say no. This is my baby. No, Doria, you Dumbo. You say yes. It is my baby, and it is a part of the institution, and therefore I am supposed to fulfill my duty to the institution and the people of this country who keep it alive. You're not supposed to be undermining your daughter with utter ignorance. I mean, your ignorance, your oppositionalism, your chip. As a certain prince said about you, you don't have a chip on your shoulder. You have a whole bag full of potatoes. And for those of you who don't know, potato chips in this country are made with, and potato crisps are made with potato. The words are interchangeable in the two cultures, England and America. So I just make that point for what it's worth, in case people miss it. Now we get to something that actually it brought back my childhood. You have Lauren Khumalo, Archie's former nanny. Well, she is a charming portrayal and an evocation of the idealized nanny, straight out of Gone with the Wind and straight out of my childhood. I immediately was 3 and 4 years old and wanted to cuddle on her lap and cuddle in her bosom. I have to tell you, say what you will, my experience and my siblings' experience and my cousins' experience has been that nobody is more affectionate than a black nanny. I say that for what it's worth. My brother used to say he was actively prejudiced in favor of black people because not only had his nannies treated him so well, but so had all of the servants and the staff in the family businesses. And my children, I loved taking them back to Jamaica because in England things were much more buttoned up, especially in those days. But as soon as they were in Jamaica, the plane would land and they'd run out of the plane and there would be all of the airport workers patting them on their heads and just wonderful. And this nanny is exactly like that. Well, putting that aside, Netflix doesn't realize that they have painted through her and through her initial encounter with Harry, the picture of a brain dead, most likely ganja smoking hippie who, if he had a brain, it's long since gone south if it's not been blown out of his mouth. Because there she is describing her first meeting with Harry. And as she's describing this meeting with Harry, where Harry is barefooted, because remember, Meghan was barefooted when she met Catherine and William for the first time. So Meghan obviously has decided, we're going to chill. This is California cool time. And Harry's gone along with it. Sorry. I hope I'm not coming down with a cold. Dear. ganja mentality comes across, whether it's a fact or not. Because Harry is photographed by Netflix on a child's swing, barefoot swinging, like a 6'1" 4-year-old or 7-year-old. I mean, you really couldn't make any of this up. The total lack of dignity. I suppose that's what happens when royalty gets polluted by celebrity. And breeding gets polluted by no brought upsy, as the Jamaicans would have put it. Line number 51 is Harry claiming, "It's always been a bit of a royal thing to go on a tour with your child. Then tour of Archie in South Africa. It was a really strange experience." Harry, the very first baby that was allowed to go on a tour anywhere was William. I remember it. You weren't even born. It's not been a bit of a royal thing to go on tour with your child. It's been very exceptional. You were simply allowed to take your baby as an exception, not as the rule. They can't even get basics like that right. And number 52 is both a lie and racist manipulation, because Netflix illustrates Harry and Meghan's success in South Africa. There is her claim to a handful of women about being a representative as a woman of colour and as a woman and as a wife and as a mother, blah, 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 blah. Then she asserts to Netflix, after there's that speech of her with, there might have been 20 or 30 women to whom she was speaking. And I remember the incident very well, that because she's then asserting to Netflix and the viewers that she felt a connection with the South Africans because she's an African American. I mean, can you believe that? That's like an American Italian going to Russia and saying, "Oh, I'm home! I'm home!" Wrong end of the continent, Meghan. And also, you claimed to be from Nigeria. Didn't you say you were 227% Nigerian? Or was it 86%? No, your mother was 86%. Having shorn all of her white and mulatto relations off the family tree somehow. Don't know how that one works because I've seen the family tree. But we're supposed to believe that lie as well. Or is it really just yet another instance of false self-identification? But that's a lie as well. Because why is it that every situation you find yourself in, you have to somehow pretend to have a link to? I mean, it's a damn good thing that you weren't a member of Schindler's List. I make that point for what it's worth. Because with whom would you have been linking yourself? I mean, there's nothing that this woman can, in any situation she finds herself in, that she somehow doesn't milk it to be a relevant part of it. Meghan, everything in the world doesn't revolve around you. Not everything in the world that happens means that you have a part of. Being a black woman would not mean, wherever you were from, that you had returned home when you touch foot on South African soil. Also, for what it's worth, Meghan, since you clearly don't know it, the indigenous South Africans are not what is categorized in the textbooks as Negroid. So they're not black sub-Saharan Africans. Google it, look it up, figure it out for yourself. Gosh, this woman is insupportable. There's an inadvertent admission by Meghan as number 53. This, she means the ITV program with Tom Bradby, was a royal documentary which the palace was greenlighting. I guess I just assumed that this was going to be a glossy version of a happy tour. And what do they then cut to? One tear, left eye. Nobody asked me if I was okay. Pity fest. She answers the question, as all excellent scene stealers do, to steal the scene. And in effect, she perverts the purpose of the documentary, which by her own admission, she knew was supposed to be a glassy version of a happy tour. And she made sure she turned it into an examination of her personal misery. Number 54 is a lie by omission. Netflix ignores how Harry and Meghan ruined the end of the tour by announcing the lawsuit against associated newspapers. Instead, Netflix, practicing diversionary tactics, which Meghan and Harry are also very adept at, focuses instead on Meghan's moan going viral, which coincided with the promotional clip for the documentary about I struggled. I had such a hard time. I struggled. And there are cuttings then used to show how newsworthy Meghan was. And they're all from American publications. I wonder who this television series has been pitched at. Could it be the supporters, Netflix, Meghan and Harry, and their backers are hoping to acquire? Because then we have the program ending with endless "We love you, Meghan" material, as Meghan claims it hit a chord for everyone with something specific to them. Her misery hit a chord with everyone. Why she was suffering so greatly as a member of the royal family. Harry and Meghan then implied that what they did was commendable and made them relatable. Now we have lie number 55, which is a lie by false interpretation. James Holt advocates for Meghan's victim status and says that she was struggling and needed more help. James Holt, would you care to answer this question for me? How if Meghan was a proud, confident woman of colour, of experience? Was she struggling? And what was she struggling over? And why was she struggling? And what help more than she got did she need? You have all accused the institution and everybody within it, including at the palace, of refusing to get her help when she was ostensibly suicidal, which I don't for a second believe she ever was. But even if she was, why was she going to HR at the palace as if she was an employee, except to lay down a marker? She needed help. What help did she need? If she had not unjustly and falsely represented herself as being a proud, confident woman of colour, experienced, knowledgeable, an advocate for good causes, if that wasn't all a lie, why did she need help? She shouldn't have needed help. And if she needed help, why didn't she and Harry get it? Excuse me, have you forgotten that her mother is supposed to be a social worker who helped to specialise in suicide, and about her husband who also headed up a mental health charity and who is now posing for Better Up as a mental health expert? But she needed help from whom? From whom? I know the help she needed, and I know the help they wanted, and I know why they wanted it. It's just nothing you would want me to articulate. Number 56. Harry links Meghan's speaking out to Diana, using her panorama interview to prove that his mother and Meghan were right and the institution was wrong. He alleges they weren't misfits. They weren't the misfits. They were the healthy ones, the freedom fighters, the mavericks out to fight the good fight for liberty. This is his message. So you now have Diana's image flashing up as she claims she was desperate, but a very strong person. Sorry, I'm confusing my roles. Diana's image flashes up and she claims she was desperate, but she was a very strong person. And I know that causes complications in the system that I live in. She doesn't mop her eyes and she doesn't do one left eye tear. No. Harry then asserts that there was, quote unquote, from an institutional perspective, something wrong with her, Meghan, and not the institutional environment we were a part of. When in fact, according to him, it's the institution that has something wrong with it. And Meghan has nothing wrong with her. So Netflix has now dished up 3 mavericks, 3 misfits, 3 oppositionalists in the form of Diana, her son Harry, and Meghan. But the 2 forerunners are Meghan and Diana, who is her role model. Because it is not possible, according to the law of physics, for there to have been so many coincidences and so many accidental parallels between Diana's life, Diana's complaints, and Meghan's life and Meghan's complaints, unless Meghan has been using Diana as a template to not only hook Harry and keep him docile and a supply, but also to monetize and maximize commercially and in terms of fame. So what do we have? Three mavericks baying in unison as to how they weren't misfits, but a 1,000-year-old institution which has evolved successfully by making changes as and when it needed to keep itself relevant and to keep itself desired by the nation. The institution's accomplishments have been totally for naught. Harry, Meghan, and Diana are the ones who should have been calling the shots. Everybody should have been fitting in with their scheme of things. They should not have been cutting their cloth according to the institution and the restraints which it imposes upon all its participants. And may I say at this point, many of the institution's diktats and forbidden territory are based upon nobility of purpose, nobility as a principle, and only incidentally nobility of rank. Ladies and gentlemen also share many of the attributes and avoid many of the pitfalls of what Meghan, Harry, and Diana did. For instance, washing their dirty linen in public and trashing everybody unfairly or fairly is beside the point. And in my opinion, most of it was uncalled for and unfair. So everybody's to put aside the lessons of history and allow the lunatics to run the asylum while they lock up the nurses and doctors and then go on a jolly trip with all of the psychedelic aspects at their disposal. That's a really interesting way of expecting any national institution to function. Final, fortunately, number 57, lie. Deception, self-deception, call it what you may, manipulation, is a very unworldly and immature Harry claiming that the fallout was bonkers. So not only is the First Amendment bonkers, but the fallout from their bad behavior was bonkers. No responsibility for them. No. They're not responsible for anything. And any reaction against them was bonkers. He claims he got support from the public, which he did from a segment of it, and certainly a very uninformed and at that time unaware of the realities of what was happening segment of the public, many of whom have since had their eyes opened. But he didn't get support from the people closest to him. Meghan claims that was the turning point, and they needed to have conversations to make this work. What Meghan and Harry wanted the royal family to do was prevent the press from speaking the truth about them. Meghan and Harry hoped that what had gone down could be erased by muzzling the press. That's what Meghan and Harry wanted, the royal family to muzzle the press. And the royal family didn't muzzle the press. The royal family refused to muzzle the press. The royal family refused to allow Meghan and Harry, in their mixed up version of events that Netflix has purveyed, throwing in everything but the kitchen sink. So you have a dash of Megxit, a dash of victimhood, a dash of prejudice, a dash of this, a dash of that. All of this is mixed up into a glorious salad of nonsense, which, when you examine it, does not stack up. But Meghan and Harry wanted the royal family to change the way it functioned and to alter its unwritten contract with the media for a free and responsible media governed by the rights of freedom of speech and such laws as prevent defamation and privacy incursions, etc. They wanted all of that to be torn up so that they would call the shots. So not only have the lunatics taken over the asylum, and not only are needles figuratively sticking out of every vein as they trip psychedelically throughout life, but we are to regard madness as desirable, or certainly such rampant selfishness as to be tantamount to madness. Well, thank God I finished it. I thought it was important to cover it because there are many very fundamental issues at stake here. And I really think it is important to fix certain issues in time and space so they become thereafter irrefutably fixed in time and space. I did it with the Queen's demise, and I'm doing it here because I know if I don't do it, it might never be done. And I'm sorry, I'm not waiting for the horse to be in the field before I shut the stable door. I see the horse neighing and as it's kicking against the stable door. I've run to shut the gate between the ring and the parade ground. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell. Remember to keep the questions coming in, and I hope you have a very Merry Christmas tomorrow. God bless and goodbye.